back to Reactivity TV. I'm Amy Albero, and I'm a licensed therapist.
I am Chris. I'm not a licensed therapist, but let's be honest. Didn't need to be one last week, still don't need to be one this week. In fact, I think Dr. Melfi could dissect this episode with a high degree of accuracy. What do you think?
Dr. Melfi was a great TV therapist.
Your position on Dr. Melfi has changed over time. When you were early in your career, you're like, she was great. And then when you were like middling in your career, you were like, she's not that good. And then you've come back around on her on the rewatches.
I mean, there are definitely things that she did that were not ethical, of course. But considering that she was working with a sociopath, she's pretty good.
Tony Soprano's a human being too,
Of course, every human being deserves care. But really
Quality
hard
care.
to hold, objectivity and unconditional positive regard for someone that kills people as part of what they do for money.
But he never admitted to it in a session.
That's fair. Gosh, it would be so much more fun to talk about The Sopranos, wouldn't it?
I mean, compared to this last couple, have you noticed that it feels like this is a tale of two Golden Bachelorettes? Where the first half of the season was wildly entertaining, really engaging, super exciting, fun. And the second half of the season has just been an absolute snooze fest. No excitement. All the suspense is gone. And we're just like rolling along, waiting for Chalk to propose, basically.
Yeah, it definitely feels like two distinct seasons. Like the beginning of the season was so fun with all of the characters. Now I guess it's down to essentially why we're here, which is the love story of it all. And it, like, if I look at it from that frame, like, I think I might enjoy this back half more if the front part weren't so good. Now I'm just kind of like waiting for it to be over in a sense, mostly because, as we've been saying the last few weeks, it just seems like there's now just such a clear winner at this point. Like, I usually like to be strung along for a little bit, but there's no suspension of disbelief here.
Mm-hmm. Yep. But before we get too far into it, let's remind everybody that thank God Dancing with the Stars was fantastic this week, because we're going to be talking about Jen and Joey at the back half of the episode. So stay tuned for that. But before we get to any of that, tell them what we're doing here.
Yes, we are here talking about Joan's season of The Golden Bachelorette, season 1 of The Golden Bachelorette, and we are at episode 7, which is famously referred to as Fantasy Suites Overnight Dates. So we are going to get into all of the nit and grit as it relates to all of these dates. But before we do, please be sure to hit that like button at the bottom of this video and subscribe. We love seeing our subscriber list grow every week. We also love all of the engagements in the comments, even when you call me out. I appreciate it. So keep that coming. We love that you're here and a part of our community.
All right. So also make sure to hit that bell icon so that you're alerted anytime we post new content to the channel. So opening thoughts. What do we like? What do we dislike? Where are we going? Should we just, speaking of sociopaths, Chalk is taking this thing home. Like, Guy is as beige as can be and boring. And Pascal is still Pascal. I think second week in a row, Pascal was the man. He brought all of the entertainment, and we saw a different side of him. The real depth of who he is came across as extremely genuine. I love Pascal. If it wasn't for Pascal, it would be really hard to sit through these episodes at this point, because Chalk, not genuine, doesn't feel authentic. Not feeling it. Your thoughts?
Yeah, I mean, the most entertaining part of this episode is similar to last episode in that the scenery is just so gorgeous. So I thought that was a highlight of the episode. But yeah, I agree with you. And we'll get into the details more. I don't have a different opinion than you on the men of this this remaining 3. So we don't need to necessarily talk about it too much up front, because I know we're going to get into it more as we go through the dates.
So speaking of Tahiti, though, we were supposed to do a week-long sailing trip with some friends in Tahiti, and it just did not fire for scheduling reasons. But that is still probably the next time we take a long sailing trip. And after watching this episode, I am more excited. I was excited before. After watching this episode, way more excited. Now, what I will say is doing it a week on a sailboat is closer to camping than doing it on the
Cruise ship.
the cruise ship that Joan got to do it on. So I'm just prepping you now. Our experience is going to be a little different than Joan's experience.
Yes.
Just prepping it.
I have come to understand what a sailing trip now actually means. So consider my expectations managed.
Excellent. Because we're definitely going to Tahiti now. All right, let's just get into good date, bad date, shall we?
Yeah.
So let's just start off with the first date, Guy. It's the boating date. I don't think there's much to say here. We love this date. We've already seen this date. In fact, we saw this exact same date with this exact same fella. Was it last episode? 2 episodes ago? You look at, you get time on a boat. In this particular case, this was closer to Mark's date where you had the captain, but you got quality, positive time. You're on the water. You're taking in the scenery. There was no side scavenger hunt because apparently Guy could hold a conversation. All around, I would give this a nice solid B plus. They had the dinner, probably bumps up to an A minus because it was a good quality dinner with a lot of alone time. So yeah, I think great, solid date.
You're forgetting one part of this date that I personally would not enjoy.
We don't go snorkeling. So every time we used to go rent the power boats down in Mexico. And it was basically, you get the power boats, you get to drive around the lagoon, then you stop for an hour and you do snorkeling, and then you get back in and you zip the power boats around. And we would just say to the tour guide, yeah, we're going to just stay in the boat. We would just stay in the boat with some drinks and some sandwiches and just hang out while everyone else went snorkeling. They could have done the same thing.
And I think I just feel so like uncomfy around fish and just kind of
getting
like
your hair
being
wet
in their element. Yeah, I do not enjoy getting my hair wet. All of that stuff. And the saltiness of the water. I was just, when Guy and Joan were like kissing underwater, I was like, oh my gosh, it's so salty.
Getting salt water in my mouth is one of the least pleasant experiences I can imagine. Yeah, I'm with you there. Also,
and the snorkel with all the saliva, like there's so much like about like snorkeling for me personally that I just like don't enjoy. I know that I'm in a minority here of someone that doesn't
sucks.
Enjoy that.
It's terrible. Like literally, but
beautiful.
But that's a voluntary activity. You can choose not to do that. Remember the time when we did the powerboat thing, and we were the only people that went on that particular tour that time. And so the tour guide's like, "Listen, I technically by rules have to go snorkeling and get in the water, even if there's only one of you." So he's like, "So I'm just going to jump in the water, and because my boss will fire me if I don't." And I was like, all right, fine, I'll jump in the water. And you sat in the boat without me and had drinks and sandwiches without me while I had to go get in the freaking water and get all sandy. I don't know
where these sandwiches come from that you're imagining, but I swear that I have not eaten a sandwich on a boat in Mexico.
Drinks, don't think that's true. There were definitely drinks involved. Anyway,
so I'm more I love as we've discussed, I love a boat day. If the option is to remain on, yes, but in a date like this, you can't opt out. Like there's no opting out. Like imagine if Guy was like, actually, Joan, this isn't my thing. You can't.
Well, I would have thought Joan with her piles of makeup would have been the one to opt out.
Well, I was thinking about her hair. I was like, oh gosh, she's gonna have to wash and blow dry and style her hair again. Poor Joan, in the like Tahitian humidity. So I was really feeling for Joan. Anyway, this for me would be like, I guess you said B plus, fine. B plus sounds fine to me.
Yeah. Okay. So then we go on to Chalk's date for, it's not really four-wheeling. It's the buggies, the buggies.
Yeah.
Yeah. So that when you get into all these off-roading things, they all have specific names. I don't know them all, but like, I think the four-wheelers are the non-car looking ones. I think the buggies are what they were technically in because it actually has like a roll cage on it or something like that. I don't know the exact details. Somebody who, lives in rural America can put in the comments exactly what this thing was. But, I liked it. For an activity as a date, not so much. We've talked about this in the past. If you're going to be in something like that, where it's really kind of hard to have meaningful conversations because of something like that, then at least give me like a Gary Leslie type situation where, at least Leslie can like grab onto me on the ATV. Still a bad date, for what it is, but yeah, at least we get some physical connection out of it. had the same kind of thing where they got to do their dinner and whatnot. But all around, this is not a good date. Certainly not a
They
good
had a
first date.
picnic in the dirt. Don't forget.
Oh, the pic. Yeah, I forgot. What you would love sitting in the dirt, eating on the ground. That sounds like something I could do with you.
Well,
Yeah.
the thing that I commented on that I said to you while we were watching is they were both wearing white. And while they
Yeah.
were, traveling by four-wheeler, whatever this vehicle was called, through like a dusty locale. So at one point we see them get up and Jones like got like dirt all over her. And so that wasn't, that a most ideal choice of wardrobe there. This isn't really a date that I would love, but I don't think I would hate it either. It is a cool way to see the island, and it's a date that we haven't seen on the season yet. And I do think, while yes, there's not opportunity for conversation, there is. It's an experience that you share together, and I feel like in this date, one of the big takeaways from Joan was that she realized that she trusted Chalk, and I feel like there is that element of it too. So while you're not necessarily conversing to build connection, you are going through kind of an intense experience that can help build a connection. So I see your point about not having like direct communication verbally, but there's other ways that you can communicate that I think you can gain in a date like this. All right. The last date was the kind of
Pascal.
cultural date that we get where they have some local food, a food buffet, as well as a Tahitian bonding ceremony.
Yeah, I mean, I think this is kind of cute. I always like to see how people interact with other cultures. I think it tells a lot about a person's adaptability, a person's kind of social awareness, just their general wisdom. So I like it. If I'm trying to really get to know somebody, I don't think that these are the types of dates where you're necessarily going to like yes, they can be a lot of fun, but it's not one of those where you look back on it and you say, "Oh my god, that was the most fun I've ever had." Right? This is a date where you learn more about somebody through observation than you do through the conversation, and that's what I love about it. Because, as we all know, I'm an economist by sort of education, and that means that I really love, as I opened up with, revealed preference, and this is a great date for revealed preference.
Yes, I agree with you there. And one thing that we'll get into when we get into Pascal's date specifically is that while there is that piece of it and seeing how someone engages with the cultural aspects, there is an element of sharing and vulnerability as well in the kind of like more ceremonial part of the date. And so I think that this date definitely, the grade of it depends on the stage of the relationship that you're in when you go. And it was definitely uh, what it revealed for Pascal and for Joan is that this was uh, too personal. Like it was a date that was too intense for their stage of their relationship. And so for Pascal, it wasn't a good date. But I imagine, maybe if it was Joan and Chalk on this date, the date could have felt really different.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, no, I think that's a really important point.
All right.
It can sit as a benchmark for where you actually are.
Yeah,
Mhm.
exactly. Exactly.
Yep. Okay, so let's move over to get into some of the actual activities of the episode. We finally get to Tahiti. We get on the cruise ship. Seems like a pretty standard cruise ship, and we get our first, kind of real activity of the episode, and that is we get a cameo consult by Nancy. Apparently, they have become friends. They live
Mhm.
relatively close together. Joan was talking about being lonely and not having family and friends around, so we pop in for a consult. Um, we get the very standard run through of all the guys, what she likes, what she doesn't like. I think she says a couple of important things here. She talks about Guy, how he is further along than she is, and
We
how
heard that a
it's
lot this
a
episode.
here a lot, yeah, and a slow smolder. Which again, don't love that when you're on a show that is forcing you to get engaged in like 8 weeks or less. I feel like a slow smolder is not where you want to be. Um, we talk about Pascal living a big life, and how he's reminiscent of John, and that's a big appealing quality about him. And then Chalk, she keeps coming back to talking about how Chalk is somebody who makes her feel safe, makes her feel seen, makes her feel sexy, and you know. As a woman, I would love to start off with those comments and say, like, how important is that? Right? Is this, does this feel like, it feels like it's so important to her? And
Mhm.
how relatable is this to, women, especially as women get older, do you think?
Yeah, I mean, very important. Think about her signature moment from the Golden Bachelor, and essentially the moment that brought her here, which is her talking about feeling invisible, especially as she gets older, as women get older. And she references that a lot, that when after John died, that she really didn't feel seen anymore. And so she's craving that. And I think I can relate to that definitely as a woman who is like very close to my 40s, like feeling that you're just from a societal perspective getting less and less, you're feeling less and less relevant. So I think it probably is really affirming to have someone that just will give you that affirmation, that validation, to feel seen, to be witnessed by someone, to feel cherished and desired. That's something that she hasn't had for a long time. And so I think it's probably very meaningful.
I will remind you that you are more and more relevant every day to my life. The more time we spend apart, the more useless I am as a human being, and I realize that. So hurry up and come home.
Do you not relate to this as a man about feeling,
No,
feeling seen and sexy? You just sent me
no,
a text yesterday about a girl in the stairwell saying that you were hot. You're
no. She
telling me
did
this
not
doesn't matter to
say
you?
I would. No, 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 no. That is not what happened. She did not say any words to me. I was walking up the stairs. She was walking down the stairs. I had never seen her before in the building. She looked at me. Her eyes just like went wide in a, oh my God, he is hot. And then she slipped and fell down the stairs the rest of the way.
That is a wildly different retelling than
That is exactly what I text you. That is exactly. Like,
she could have. You could have just startled her in the hallway. I mean, you're very attractive. You know
no,
that,
no,
but
no. Her eyes said like, like she lost her footing because I was clearly so.
your
Where is that text
attractiveness just
message?
swept her off her feet.
It really did. It just knocked her right over. Listen, I was a gentleman. I picked her up off the floor. You know?
So this doesn't speak to you, this concept. What as a man are you now seeking? Like what would be meaningful to receive? Like what would give you like validation of your personhood?
Okay. It's an interesting question. I mean, so ultimately, so women are community based, right? When we look at like the way the female brain is wired is one that community is very important. The being liked within a community is important. Having friends, having connections, not being alone. These are all things that are very important, and it's not a societal pressure. This is a biological tick that women have, right? And that's why women are great community builders. This is why they're great society builders. This is why they're great at sort of running culture, so to speak, right? But that's not how men are wired. Like biologically speaking, men are solo creatures by nature. And so being seen like in the same way that say Joan's talking about it is just not how men operate. I don't need to be seen by other men. I need to be feared by other men. I need to be respected by other men. But I don't need a companion to go and hang out with, to chat with, to talk to. I could go the rest of my entire life never having a deep conversation, and that would not impact me mentally the same way as like having beating another man in a competition, right? Especially a man that's perceived to be at equal or greater capability at something than me, is sort of the male equivalent. That would
Mm.
sustain me mentally as long as you having a wonderful best friend you can have deep conversations where
Yeah.
you're talking
I
about
mean, that
relatable
tracks.
topics.
I think
It's
about
yeah.
conversations with my dad, who's about to be 71 and still doing CrossFit. And one of the things he like really loves to talk about is
Loves
when
beating on those 40-year-olds.
yeah, loves that he's in better shape than people in their 40s and 50s, and loves that
Mhm.
he's fitter and faster and stronger than men who he should not be at this at his like more advanced age. So that definitely tracks.
Yeah, it's just a wiring difference. So men, when we say be seen, I think the word seen is doing different work. For a
Hmm.
woman, it means telling you that finding you attractive, in some way you're getting your validation externally, right? Somebody
Hmm.
is telling you that you have value. for men, we generate our own value and we measure ourselves against who we beat, or whatever we mean by beat, right? In some competitive sort of landscape. And so
Mhm.
our validation comes internally through external activities,
Yeah.
whereas
I mean,
women's
cue
validation
Chalk's
comes
entire personality.
exactly chalk to a T. There's a perfect
Mhm.
example, right? Right. Women, on the other hand, you get your validation, externally, from activities that you sort of do internally. It's a complete inverse of what's
Mm.
going on. And so to be seen it's for I would say it's be seen for women, be recognized
Mm.
for men. That's the distinction I would
Yeah,
make.
that's a good distinction.
Yeah. All right, so let's jump over really quick. I just want to talk about this slow smolder. He's further along than me. How does this not mean he's not supposed to be here and Jonathan should be taking his place? Is there any other interpretation to
I
this?
think I interpret slow smolder to be he's a really nice guy. He's handsome. I'm attracted to him.
But
Good on paper kind of guy, but we don't really have any chemistry. Like I really do think that like on paper they make a lot of sense together. That's what they've talked about. Their lifestyles are literally parallel. Like it should make sense. But you the heart wants what the heart wants, I guess. And they just don't have that spark that we see
callback
her
from
have.
last episode, he's just safe dick.
Yes, safe dick. Yeah.
All right, so shall we get into the dates?
Yes.
So we start off with guys' date. This was fine. I mean, the only way I could it was frustrating in that we literally just saw the same thing. They met on a dock. What they do last date? They met on a dock. They went on a boat. What they do last date? They went on a boat. It's like, what did they do on the boat last time? They drank some champagne. What did they do this time? They drank some champagne. It's like we already saw this. What are we doing, right?
This reminds me of to preview later the face off between Danny and Joey
Oh, I got so much to talk
where
about.
they like
Oh,
they
wait.
it
The
literally
symmetry.
started the exact same way. Yeah, the symmetry.
Oh,
Yeah.
oh, well, we're gonna get there. Don't spoil it because I got a lot to talk about on the symmetry. Okay, I actually
Mhm.
there's a lot to be said about the Dancing with the Stars of Joey and Danny this week. But yeah, I mean, the snorkeling very meh. The dinner they had a nice conversation, but what a hedged toast that was. Which I kind of like. Either go all in or bail. Like this hedging sort of strategy at this point really turn off for me. He is so beige, right? If he was a color, it would be beige or like taupe or like off white. There's just no charisma. He seems like a nice enough guy, right? But like, there's just like he's on screen. It's like, dude, like, come on,
Yeah. As one of
something.
my
Let's,
clients would say, dry as toast.
yeah, like just suck on a power wire for like 10 seconds and just let's amp this up. It's like call back to Sopranos. We're gonna do a lot of this tonight, apparently. It's like when Moltisanti he decides he's gonna make Adriana a producer, and he's got all the bought all the time with the production studio, and he's got that band that doesn't that's playing just like crap, and he's trying to get him to produce some stuff. And he's like, either spike up or suck on a power line. You do something. Just you got to get the energy up in here. That's how I feel with Guy.
Yeah.
Like somebody hit him with a taser or something. Just juice this guy in some way, shape, or form because there's nothing going on.
He's an ER doctor. I imagine that again he's 66. I think that was his age. For his I don't know how long he's been an ER doctor, but for a good chunk of his career, he has had to stay really calm under pressure. And so I imagine some of it is, yes, temperament naturally, but also just a learned skill of just being very calm and very like
Mm-hmm.
grounding. And so I imagine it probably feels like nice to be with him in some way, but like on screen anyway, he seems again very nice. This is no
Yeah, yeah.
shade to Guy. I think
And he's a
he's like a
wonderful
very
person.
sweet
He
guy.
is the best friend that you want,
Yeah. Yeah.
right? He's a friend that you want.
Yeah.
Do I want to date this guy? No.
Well, I think part of what the issue is that he's so smitten that I think that is also getting in the way with him, like showing a little bit more of his personality because he seems
Mhm.
he used the word mesmerized, like he seems starstruck by Joan, and so I think that is also obfuscating like his personality.
Mm-hmm. Yep, that's fair. Um, they do end up going to the fantasy suites. Joan makes it abundantly clear to all the guys that she is not going to be getting down, that this is a, conversation only situation. And obviously all of the guys, I mean, I don't think anybody would have expected anything different. If they did, I think that that's more of an indication that they don't know who Joan is. And obviously this group of guys, that was not going to be a problem, right? I don't think anybody thought that more was going to be going down in these fantasy suites anyways. But I do give her a lot of credit. I thought like this is the type of role modeling that I think we need to see more of, right? Because we have so much pressure right now telling young people to go off on the hookup culture, and we know factually that hookup culture is wildly damaging, especially to women, right? And it's not a societal thing. It's a biological thing. And so seeing somebody on screen coming out and saying, yeah, you know what, we're going to keep the numbers low. I think that's positive role modeling that we should see more of, because it's, I think less hookup culture is going to be better for
Mm-hmm.
everybody,
Mm-hmm.
men
I
and
mean, it's
women.
a values statement, right? Like she's saying
Mhm.
that I believe in like really only having one person that you're physical with at a time. She talks about wanting um to save this for whoever remains, who she is envisioning to be like her partner for the rest of her life. She also said something that we always comment on. She says, "I'm not going to do that with three people. I'm going to save it for the final person. And the person who I end with has to be the priority." And what I was inferring from what she was saying is really thinking about the repercussions of what it would be like for the person she ends up with to have the knowledge and experience that she was just intimate and like sharing her body with someone else. And that's something that we talk about all the time on this show, is like, God, imagine whoever they pick watching this conversation
Mhm.
or this exchange. And Joan seems really mindful of that.
Yep. All right. Anything else we want to talk about with Guy before we go over to Chalk and Jesse doing a little consult?
One final thing I guess that I can add is that Joan does say that following this time with Guy, that while he was farther behind the other two connections, that this experience kind of like helped him catch up. So I thought that that was interesting. Again, that's not something that we're necessarily seeing, though. I guess it does make sense that if you spend like a full 12 hours with someone or more, that of course your connection is going to grow, especially when you're like in privacy and able to like really get to know one another. So I just wanted to add that in.
I mean, unless I see it on screen, I just assume it's all producers are telling her she has to say these things to make a good show. That's my tinfoil hat, which I think is less tinfoil hatty than a lot of the crap I say. All right. So Chuck and Jesse sit down, and, basically Chuck just starts what is going to be an episode of love bombing, where he talks about how he's in love with her. No part of this feels genuine. He keeps saying, "Oh, there's other gentlemen around," but even when he says all that, he keeps using the like, "There's two other gentlemen." It just feels like he's very aware he's on camera and trying to make it seem like he's humble and but none of it feels genuine. None of it feels like he's really interested in what's happening with these other two people, insofar as he wants to win this thing, and he only cares if they're actually forming a better connection, and he's ready to
Yeah.
to fight over it. I mean, just the way he was talking to Jesse. Did you get You vibes? The TV show You? Like
What? Why?
those
What
are the
makes you
vibes
say
that
that?
I was like, is this guy gonna go on like a rampage and just start like offing all of his competition, like in going one bunk
Is
bed at a
that
time in the
ferocious?
mansion? I
Yeah.
mean,
Yeah.
it was getting to me, it was getting a little intense, right? It
Yeah.
just it just
Yeah.
it
I
was getting
mean,
a little psycho intense for me.
and it was just the framing of it all that just doesn't feel great to hear. Like kind of emphasizing that the number of roses, like, so there's this focus on this tangible prize.
Mhm.
He said, he referenced tough competition with the other two guys. They're bonding more, they might take her away from me. And then this whole idea of engagement or heartbroken. So it feels like quite
Those are
manipulative.
very Chalk-centric statements,
Hmm. Hmm.
not very Joan-centric.
Yeah. Yeah. I
For somebody that
agree. I
supposedly
agree.
makes her feel seen, not
Hmm.
seeing a lot of her there.
Hmm. Hmm. Yeah. I mean, it's definitely all about him. He also kind of kicks it off with a guy like me doesn't throw around like the love word.
Yeah,
Um,
bullshit. I don't think
and
that's.
yeah, well, and
Meanwhile,
I know. I mean, that seems to be all we hear. I do want to define love bombing because you use that word a couple of times, and just to make
mhm.
sure that we're using it in earnest. So, love bombing is a pattern of behavior in which someone overwhelms another person with affection and attention early in the relationship, which can involve excessive compliments, grand gestures, pushing for commitment, wanting to spend a lot of time together, paying for everything. Um, it can be manipulative. Whether that's conscious or not is up for debate, but um, it does like in an effort to try to get them, and insofar as like to gain some control or power, again, and that doesn't necessarily need to be um, like in an abuse way, but there are power dynamics in all sorts of relationships, and in this particular example, like Joan is the object here, and Chalk is the thing. He's trying to win Joan, and so in this situation, Joan should have the power, but in the way that Chalk is engaging with her, the power imbalances have shifted.
So how much time has to pass before it's no longer love bombing when you do those things?
I don't know. That's a good question. I think what makes love bombing like why it's so focused on the beginning early stages of a relationship is because the this level and intensity of emotion is just not possible when you don't have that much of a connection with someone. So how on earth could this be authentic and genuine and based like truly on the relationship that you have? And so like how do you put a time limit on like being like in love? I don't know. I think that's different for everyone, but I think not when you're a couple weeks in, or should you be all in this complete way?
Okay, so is 17 years long enough? Because the description of love bombing sounds a lot like how I treat you on a daily basis.
No, I think I do think that you genuinely love me.
Oh, that's
I think
nice.
we're there.
Yeah. If you want to love bomb me sometime, I'm okay with that too, you know. Okay, so we get on to their actual dates. By the way, well, before we get there, Jesse's kind of sitting there, and Jesse's done a really good job. I mean, he's a fantastic host. I don't think he's ever worked as little as he's worked this season. But that being said, he's been doing a fantastic job as a host. But even in this conversation with Chalk, it didn't really feel like he was all that interested in engaging with Chalk all that much. It felt like he's like, okay, can this interview end now? Am I
Kind of
wrong?
how Joan seems on the dates with
On
Guy.
the date with Guy? Yeah, exactly. All right, so we go over and we actually get the date. They meet on some random path. That path leads to the buggy thing we already, we talked about in Good Date, Bad Date. Okay, this is where I get really frustrated. Okay, because we learn a piece of information here. Joan says, I bet you do this all the time at home. And what does Chalk say? Yeah, I have two of these. In fact, the ones I have are way cooler and they're all jacked up and whatnot. Okay, so let me get this straight, production. Okay. So date one is a date on a boat with a guy who owns a boat who took her on a boat in his hometown. Date two is she goes out like four wheeling with a guy who owns four wheelers, and they're going to do this if she picks him at his home. What the hell are we doing? Like, you're in Tahiti. Do something that you wouldn't do with these people at home on an average Saturday. Am I wrong here? Is production just super lazy right now? Frustratingly so?
Well, I could see the argument for why actually that would be meaningful, because then you get more of a glimpse into what your life would be. Where I have a problem with that, though, is okay, you keep Guy in his comfort zone. You keep Chalk in his comfort zone and you push and force vulnerability on Pascal, like that's where I have an issue. We're going to get to Pascal's date and my many, many issues with that. But it be consistent. If we're doing like, let's parallel life outside of here, let's get a glimpse of life outside of here, then keep it consistent across the 3 dates.
Yeah, that's a very good point. I just think it's lazy and frustrating. Like when I go on vacation. So one time we went on vacation and we heard about this really cool like park thing, and we went there and we discovered it's a water park. And I was really frustrated. I said, "Well, we're never doing that again." Like I can go to a water park at home. I'm not going thousands of miles on vacation, spending however much on hotels and flights and whatever to go to a freaking water park. I don't care how cool the water
Right.
park
That could
is. I
have
can go to
been
one down the
anywhere.
street. Could be
Yeah.
anywhere. And that's sort of how I feel about these dates. You could have done this anywhere, right? And in fact, when the two people who went on these dates are in fact like actually own these same vehicles, to me, it's a big miss. It's a missed opportunity, and it's a waste of your time in a beautiful country. That you may never go to again. So I had big problems here with production, but then again, I've really had some problems with production. So anyway, back to Chalk's date though. She is giggly and bubbly, and you can just tell there is no comparison between the way she greets Chalk and the way that she greets Guy, and it just further provides evidence like what is Guy doing here? And it's frustrating to watch because you can't. There's no way to even like pretend for a second that Guy and Chalk are on the same level. She's talking about how much she missed him and how it's been so long. Meanwhile, Guy, he's the one saying those things to Joan, and she's giving a very flat affect, and not the most exciting of responses. Right? She looked bored, and then you said I think at one point she looked exhausted on Guy's date. We've got none of that. She's jumping into this 4-wheeler buggy thing, and she's telling him to go faster and faster and giggling and having all this fun. We saw none of that personality with anybody else.
Yeah. She really, really cares for Chalk. That you can see it. Like, and that's I think why I get frustrated with Guy, because like Joan, to her credit, can't fake it. And like and so like she's being honest in her feelings with Chalk when you just see it. You see it all over her face and her body language and in the way that she interacts with him, what she's saying about him and their relationship. Like you can't fake that.
Yep. So they do picnic in the dirt. We already talked about this. They talk a little bit. He, is starting to do some of the love bomby stuff. They end up at a dinner, and then it's just full on love bombing.
He tries to force her into some clarity. Tell me what's going on. Tell me where your mind is. It's tough to not know where your mind is. That kind of thing. And she's sort of like trying to handle him a little bit and saying like, this is kind of a leap of faith. And I really wanted fate to decide. And I feel like I'm getting more clarity the more and more that, time passes on this journey. But then he goes into this whole monologue about how there's good competition here. There's tough competition. He's an overly confident guy. That's who he is. He's not being cocky when he says that he can see a future. And then they start talking about, Chalk again, throwing it down again, saying, I just, couldn't help but tell you that I was falling in love with you when you were leaving. And, and that it's at that moment that, Joan starts to say, it's been so long since someone has said that they're falling in love with me.
She seems like a words of affirmation gal.
Absolutely.
All you got to do is give her a few compliments, and it will gloss over. So here's something that
he says to her. Speaking of words of affirmation, I'm sorry to cut you off.
Yeah,
you were the best thing that ever happened to me.
That's a big statement after a couple of weeks and only a few hours of time together.
After a couple of weeks, a few hours, children, a wife, and a dead fiance.
Yeah. I mean, think about how shitty you feel if you're his kids right now.
It's just a lot. It just, Joan seems so genuine in her feelings for him. And I don't know. I don't think he thinks he's lying, like he's bullshitting.
Oh, yeah. No.
I think he thinks he's being honest. I
And
don't
I
believe it.
can't really figure out like how she doesn't see it. So going back to her consult with Nancy, one of the things that I thought was just like shocking to me when she's like, I have no red flags with any of these guys. It's like, well, hold on here. Hold on.
Right.
You just talked last episode about the red flags you have with Pascal and Jordan about, maybe not being able to get there. Jordan's gone, but Pascal's still here. That's a red flag. You know, you're telling me you don't have any red flags about Chuck?
Mm-hmm.
None?
Mm-hmm.
Because I
Well,
got
the
red
thing
flags
she
about
keeps
Chuck.
saying about Chalk, and I wonder if it's foreshadowing in some way, or maybe there's something about her intuition that's coming through, but she keeps saying, she said it repeatedly now across episodes. I wonder if Chalk is too good to be true.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Now, I, for one, as an audience member, seeing a slightly different side of things than she sees, I don't see him as too good to be true. I don't like, he looks to me like a guy that I would not be setting my mom up with if my dad passed.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Right. Like,
Yeah. And what do you think it is? It's the intensity level, like the
he's
what is
not
it?
genuine. It just doesn't
Yeah.
feel genuine. It feels it feels overly alpha in a sense where
Mm-hmm.
you've said it several times over the last several weeks. It feels like he's trying to win a game. It doesn't feel like he's there for the right reasons.
Mm-hmm.
He's overly intense. It feels like he's a little manipulative. I mean, he used his mother's memorial service, the way he did for the hometown. I just don't like that. We've talked about it several times early on. I think it was in maybe week 3 when they had their like the date after their
Disney
one-on-one
date.
date. Yeah, the week after that, where he did some wildly manipulative things. And I just he doesn't come across as genuine. He kind of comes across sometimes as a little bit like of a psycho. Like I
Mm-hmm.
do feel like if he doesn't get his way behind the scenes, he could flip out. Like I
Yeah.
don't think he's
Yeah.
I don't think I think when he's on camera and in public, he can rein it in. I think behind closed doors, this guy might be a psycho.
Mm.
He
Well,
has he has like
that's a strong word, but I do, for someone that talks about his armor and being so contained, I do wonder what it does look like when he loses his temper. Like that like eventually like the pot's got to boil over at some
Mhm.
point.
Yeah, I got so many red flags at Chuck, so many red flags. So for Joan to say she's got no red flags, knowing that she does have a red flag
Yeah.
about Pascal, because she just talked about it, and just seeing what we see of Chuck, I I don't know what she's talking about. I'm
Yeah. Yeah.
confused. Um, but they do go on their fantasy suite overnight. He does the so disingenuous. Well, I'm not going to talk about what happened, but man, oh man, was it a great time? Wink, wink. It was an
Yeah.
awesome
Yeah.
time. Not going to talk about it. She can talk about it. I'm not going to talk about it. But man, oh man, wink, wink. It's a great time I had. The best time. Dare I say
So fun.
yeah, yeah. It's like, oh God, shut up already. And then we get him journaling, and it's like, dude, like, do I think you journal? No, I don't think you journal. I'm gonna say that that this is a female audience, and you are being disingenuous because females are like 50 times more likely to journal, and it makes you look like you're in touch with your feelings. I don't think you're in touch with your feelings. I don't think you journal. I think you're doing that for the camera. Am I being a jerk here?
You're making a lot of assumptions.
But I'm a guy, which means I have certain intuitions about other guys.
Sure.
Like I said,
Well,
I'm not setting him up with my mother. That's not happening.
yeah, that's fair. She would run him right over. She would call him right out.
Oh, yeah, no,
I
just
don't.
just
Ooh, I was going to say
destroy
something
him.
that I don't. I was going to say your mom is way too strong of a woman for him, and I don't mean that in the way that I don't think Joan is a strong woman. I think that she is, but I
Oh no,
think
my
that
mom's a
Joan.
bruiser. She rub him down to a nub of a man by the end.
Yeah. Well,
Oh yeah.
I think that Joan probably strikes Chalk as someone that he can manipulate.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not saying
Yes.
that he can, but I could imagine that.
She gives the perception of somebody who's manipulatable.
Yeah.
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 Mm-hmm. Because she's a caregiver, and
Yeah. Exactly.
she's yeah, very giving of herself and very sacrificial
Yeah.
in a
Yeah.
lot of ways. Yeah. Yep. Mm-hmm. Um, and even what I would say is like a big difference between like my mother and Joan, right? Is like my mother, also a caregiver, a nurse, also very, very much, has a very similar martyrdom, like always going to give to other people, sacrifice more than she has to sacrifice for other people. But at the same time, I feel like Joan has this very soft exterior. There's
Mhm.
my mother, when she's feels taken advantage of, there is a
Mhm.
point where she's like,
Mhm.
nope, we're done
Yeah.
here. You're on
Yeah.
the list. I don't think
Yeah.
Joan has
Right.
a list, right?
Yeah. I
And I
don't.
think that's the big
It
deciding.
doesn't take much for your mom to feel like someone's trying to like pull one over on her.
Yeah,
Um,
and
and maybe
once,
sometimes that switch is a little too sensitive, perhaps. But like she will not. She's assertive in
yeah,
that way.
and then you're out forever.
Yeah.
There's no coming back from that. Yeah, exactly. So I don't think Joan has that, and that's what makes her feel more manipulatable, right?
For sure.
Yep.
All right. Let's move on to the man of the hour, Pascal.
Yeah, my boy Pascal. So Pascal does sit down with Jesse, and let me tell you something. This was one of the highlights of the entire
Yeah.
season for me. I
But
loved this moment for
before
him.
we get into it,
Mhm.
I just want to, because this will come up in Pascal's chat with Jesse, and I agree with you that it was one of the highlights for sure. But one thing that we hear Joan consistently say about Pascal, and we get it again as we're like kind of panning over to Pascal, is that um, every day is about fun with Pascal. We're going to have this big life. We're going to have this big adventure. And one of the things, I mean, not only does she say that about Pascal, but she seems very, very focused on that in all of these dates, that it's all about
Mhm.
light and fun and happy and adventure. And I please hold me accountable to coming back to this statement. I just want to make
Mhm.
sure I highlight it before we get into this because it will be meaningful.
Yeah. Okay. I mean, he is a fun guy. That has been
Mhm.
his whole shtick. But the thing that we really peel back a little bit more of the onion here in the Jesse conversation, where he really opens up in a way that he hasn't, in a way that he
Mhm.
seems to be having difficulty with Joan. He's able to sit down and talk to Jesse about it. And he does talk about how his fun, personality and adventurous personality is all just a shell to the fact
Mhm.
that, he does, as he calls himself later, he's damaged goods, and he knows he's got a lot of kind of hangups with relationships, and a lot of stuff coming back to his childhood. And you see him really get emotional, and you see him talk about things in a real, true, genuine, vulnerable way. And I don't know why he can't get there with Joan. We kind of learn a little bit more about that later, but it was a beautiful moment to finally see the real Pat. We got a glimpse of it last episode, right? A
Mhm.
glimpse of like, oh, there is so much more beneath the surface here.
Yeah.
And like all the other stuff that we've had fun with, and we talked earlier in the season how he's aligning the guys and getting everybody to poke fun at him, and he's kind of the life of the party in a lot of ways and stuff like that. But then we got a glimpse of him last episode, and it just feels like he just like kind of busted out, and you saw this true, like this human being finally,
Yeah.
right? He's been a caricature up until now. And now we
Mhm.
see the real human being.
And and that the thing about Pascal, you're right. Like we saw so much vulnerability here, and 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 we got a more three-dimensional view of this very dynamic person, this person that does have a lot of depth. And I think it was really important that he highlighted that this exterior that he portrays is all a front, as a way to um, feel protected from rejection, from judgment, from even accessing, like as he put it, his, I'm quoting him, fucked up background. And so I think that is so meaningful, that playing this part, being this character, is a way to shield yourself from vulnerability, of not wanting to get hurt. And I want to again come back to my earlier point about Joan and her focus on that, on fun, on adventure, on like keeping things light and airy. That's also her way of trying not to get too far in or too deep in with someone again, to avoid a huge heartbreak like she just had with her, husband of 30 some odd years. And so I'm seeing there's a lot of parallels between Joan and Pascal in the way that they perform. Joan has
Mhm.
it so together. She references her perfectionism later in this episode, which is something I've called from the beginning.
Yep.
But they do relate a lot in this of, kind of like, I'm fine, I'm fine, I'm fine on the outside and hurting so much on the inside. And she eventually says, as she, reflects on the breakup, that, when you go through something difficult and you have to be there for other people, you push your suffering away, and that becomes who you are and what you do. And that's what Pascal is also talking about, and what Pascal is also showing us. And he becomes the court jester as a way to um, not deal directly with his suffering, even though it is hurting him so much. One more thing I just wanted to point out. So Jesse says what we have been reflecting on, which is that people get the wrong impression about you, Pascal. They see these things, they see your, what you have and what you do, and they think that's who you are, basically. And I was wondering how much of that being so true for Pascal, and actually feeling really seen by Jesse because he was able to really be vulnerable here. So we have that knowledge. And then all Pascal hears from Joan is, "You're so fun. We're going to have this big
Mm.
life. It's just going to be adventurous." And I think that also he didn't feel seen. He didn't feel understood. He didn't feel very known by Joan. And I imagine that also played into his discomfort in being truly vulnerable with her, is that she didn't get it. She didn't get him.
Hmm.
Um,
I really like that take. Yeah, and you know what? I actually think that now that you mentioned it, I actually think that's pretty relatable, right? Like I can think about when I was dating, or even when I'm in, like, starting new business relationships or something like that. The questions that get asked of me are definitely big factors in how I perceive, either somebody's emotional intelligence or somebody's just level of interest, or just their capability to understand what I'm looking for. And there's all these different relationships, you're looking for different things. But yeah, you're right. She probably never asked the questions or made the statements that led him to feel as though he could be vulnerable in the way that
right.
he needed to be vulnerable. I
Well,
I, I like
and
that take a lot.
what does she also say to him? "You remind me a lot of my husband in that you have these qualities." And so how much permission did he really have to be something different? She
Deviate
does
to
say, "I'm not
deviate from those.
looking
Yeah.
for a replacement," but like, if this is how someone has categorized you, and even Joan, for her to place that bias for herself on this man, that she's really focusing on the qualities that remind her of her late husband, that she does have a little bit of tunnel vision to kind of view him just in that way because of
Hmm.
her bias and associations that she's making. So I think they were kind of doomed to fail in a way, because there were so many commonalities. And that's why, in as therapists, one thing that we like really talk a lot about and have to think a lot about is building our curiosity muscle. So it allows us to not be assumptive, and allows for our own biases to not get in the way. And the most difficult person it is to sit with sometimes is the person that you relate to the most, or the person that reminds you of someone that you love and care about the most, because it almost puts you in a place to not be curious, because you already feel so familiar. You feel like you know someone, you feel like you understand someone, and therefore you don't ask questions that you would of someone that isn't as relatable to you. And so I do think that there is a piece of that might have gone on here with Joan. Again, we don't see the full scope of their relationship, but that uh, with hindsight, I wonder if that's also what was at play.
Yeah, I mean, it's a great take. Yeah, I nothing of interest to add to that. There's one thing that I do want to address, and that is, um, obviously they go on the culture date. He speaks a whole bunch of French. It was a cute little fun time, but it was clearly way deeper emotionally than he was prepared to get, and it really
Mm-hmm.
set him into the spiral. And it
Mm-hmm.
meant that he was going to, effectively self-eliminate. He foreshadowed this for us. I think your take on why is a wonderful explanation as to probably why he ends up self-eliminating here. Um, the important thing that I want to mention here is that I did find there was a tremendous amount of relatability to what Joan was saying at this point. And not for myself, but for you, because when she was talking about being a caregiver and pushing everything down all the time, all I could think about was when you come home at the end of every day and you have spent the entire day caring for your staff, caring for all of your clients, caring for the referrals that we don't even end up treating for one reason or another, and we refer out. You give them more care than probably the providers and clinicians that they're going to end up seeing, right? And I just, the amount of support you're constantly giving to everybody, your parents, your brother, your family, all the friends, when you come home and just there's nothing left, and it happens almost every night, right? And that's just when she was talking, that's what I was visualizing.
Mm.
And so like I can say, just as a firsthand observer of the toll that being a true caregiver takes on a person. And so I just, I thought it was a powerful thing for her to say. And this is one of the few times where I don't just like roll my eyes and say, oh
Mhm.
yeah, this is just somebody telling a victim story. Like, being a caregiver takes a lot out of you. And
Mhm.
I just want to say, I recognize you and I see
You
you and
see
I
me?
appreciate you. Yeah.
No, thank you.
Even though you got
I
nothing left to give me when you get home, I got to care for
that's
you when you get home.
that's not always true, but it is often true. And one thing I was actually just talking about it with a colleague this morning in her supervision, because she was kind of talking about this, like, the performative nature that it is to be a caregiver sometimes. And I was sharing with her that one thing that I often talk about with my own therapist is sometimes how frightening it is at how good and quick I am at just kind of like going through something tough or feeling stressed or not feeling well physically. The ability that I've learned to have to just kind of like zip everything up and just be on and be present and be caring, despite whatever else is going on or just whatever else I need, is like almost scary at how good I've become at that, how practiced I am at that. And so when Joan was talking about this, when you learn to just push down or push aside suffering, that just becomes who you are and what you do. I was like, I relate to that so strongly, and I think a lot of people in caregiving positions do. I mean, again, coming back to your mom, this is a high on Vicky episode here, but I just think about her as well, in being a nurse and being a caregiver for her mom and for all of you kids and the grandkids, and like her, it feels like her energy is always like, this is just what you have to do. Like there isn't a choice. This is just what you do. You just keep going. Like despite how tired you are or whatever, how stressed you are, like this is just what you do. This is just what the role is. And that's something in your mom I relate to a lot. It's like, yeah, like you just show up, like you just this is who you are and what you do.
Mm-hmm. That's also why I don't mind. I'll let you be a little mean to me when you get home. I know it's not personal.
It's not necessarily to you, it's more at you, if
Yeah,
that
it's all
makes a
right.
difference.
Listen, I'm willing to be a punching bag 5 days out of the week. Okay. Saturday and
Gosh, this I'm
Sunday.
I'm really becoming the villain in this story here very
You are a
quickly.
wonderful wife. You are a wonderful business owner. You're a wonderful boss. You're wonderful. You are. Without further ado, Pascal does self-eliminate. He does it
Mhm.
over dinner. I don't think Joan really saw it coming, but I also don't think she really fought for it either, which I think is just further indication that Chalk is going to be the pick anyways.
I
So,
don't think she
uh,
fought for it. I think she completely shut down. I don't think it
mm,
was necessary. I do believe that she did have feelings for Pascal. I think Pascal and Chalk are two in one.
yeah,
Chalk number
you mean,
one, Pascal
oh,
being
yeah,
two.
gotcha. Yeah.
But I think that like she felt the sting of rejection and then just like
Hmm.
immediately shut down.
Yeah.
Pascal is direct with her and says, I have been in love before. I know what love feels like. This feels like more like friendship to me, not like love. And Joan really takes that to heart, and in her emotional state starts to internalize that as, I wasn't lovable enough for Pascal. And I imagine next episode
That's a
we're going to
harsh
hear
direction to
a,
take on that.
exactly, and that's like her honest in the moment feelings
Hmm.
about it. Again, I think with some time and space, even if it's a few minutes from what happened, we will probably hear her reflections on how she's able to move forward with the other two, or one really.
Hmm.
But what did you think about the way that Pascal handled this conversation with her? The
I thought it was fantastic, honestly. Like I thought he came in, he was direct, he explained himself, he didn't leave anything really on the table. He didn't blame her or really himself. It's just, this is the situation.
Yeah.
It's hard to go wrong with raw honesty, and it was raw honesty. The way he basically said, like, I still care about you. I want to be friends. You call me if you need anything. Like, walked
Yeah.
her out. They had every part of this felt genuine. No part of this felt like it was in any way, shape, or form something about Joan. Even if, to your kind of theory, it might have actually just been she was asking the wrong questions.
Hmm.
I don't know how you handle this better. Am I wrong?
No, a few weeks ago I shared a Brene Brown quote, which is being clear is being kind. And I thought that this was probably the best breakup I can remember in the franchise. He was so honest. He was so direct. He was not hurtful. I mean, not to say Joan's feelings weren't hurt, but he was just so honest about where he was and didn't beat around the bush. Didn't necessarily softball it for her. He treated her like a grown woman who could,
Mm-hmm.
handle the truth. And he didn't wait to get eliminated. I
Mm-hmm.
think there was so much integrity in what he did, and I think that we could learn a lot from how to handle difficult conversations from this interaction.
You know who should have watched this scene and learned something? The Marine from Gen season. What was his name? Maurice. What the heck was his name? Begin with an M.
Marcus.
Marcus. Marcus. We loved Marcus. This Marcus, if you're watching,
Yes.
this
Yes.
is how you handle this conversation.
Yeah.
This is
Yeah.
what we wanted from Marcus last season.
Yeah. Right. Yeah. Just be honest. Just be honest.
Anything else, or do you want to move on to Rose and Thorns?
Let's do Rose and Thorns.
I'm happy you asked about my Rose this week.
Love it. My thorn this week.
I hated to see that.
I'd love to hear your rose.
Okay. My Rose, I really, really liked this unpeeling of the layers of Pascal in the conversation with Jesse. I think in a lot of ways Jesse has done almost nothing this entire season. And I think Jesse shined here. I think Pascal shined. I think it gave us great color on a fan favorite character that just made him more lovable and more endearing. And I thought Jesse was on his game, and I feel like he could be very rusty right now because he hasn't gotten a lot of work this season. So
Not a lot
this
of
whole
reps.
scene, this whole scene, this might actually be my favorite scene, except for excluding Jack scenes, obviously. Outside of Jack scenes, this might have been my favorite scene so far of the entire season.
Yeah, this is up there. I mean, Pascal won the episode in my opinion. I think
2 weeks in a row.
What a gem. Yeah, I know. And so I guess my thorn is that we won't have Pascal anymore. I mean, we'll have him on.
I mean, it's only one more
Mental.
episode because we're going to get him on the couch next week.
Yeah, yeah. So I'm very, very sad to see Pascal leave. I think that's like a thorn of mine. But I think my rose goes to Joan for the boundaries she set around the fantasy suites and
Mhm.
the proactivity and the foresight that she has for like honoring her future relationship. And that though again, these are conversations that we just don't see happen or handled in this way. And I loved that. I love to see that.
Yep. I'm going to go for my thorn. I've already said it multiple times. You cannot give me 2 dates in Tahiti that are literally dates that you could do at home, and you will do at home because the vehicles that are being used are owned by the people that are on the current dates. That is so lazy production. So lazy.
I want to add like a bonus rose because I haven't really talked about this in a while.
Right.
Joan's wardrobe this episode was
great,
amazing. Yeah. I loved every single thing she wore. She looked unbelievable. Like there were times that I was with Guy and was like actually mesmerized by like just how beautiful she is. She's stunning. But we can have 2 roses this episode. But my thorn was the salty, snorkely kiss. I hate to see it. Not for me.
Yeah, snorkeling in general, I'm out. I'm out.
I mean, it was cool. It's one of those things where like cool in theory that you can swim with all the stingrays and etc. But like, I don't like it. And then the salty
Yeah.
snotty
Yeah.
snorkel kiss. I'm out.
Okay. I think we've done what we can do with this episode. Okay, so we were going to do Dancing with the Stars at the end of this episode, but apparently we had a lot to say and it went really long. So we're not going to put it here and we're going to release it as a separate video. Otherwise, you're going to have a 4-hour episode and we don't want that. So even if you might want that. So go and check out the Dancing with the Stars video itself. That's going to be separately posted. And with that, Amy, take us to bed.
It's so weird to hear you call me by my name. Okay. We did it. We just wrapped up the Fantasy Suite episode of Joan's season of The Bachelorette. We will be back next week with the Men Tell All, which Chris is so excited to be reunited with his main man, Jack.
You're my boy, Jack.
And so let's fingers crossed for some good, fun, entertaining stuff with the lovely men of this season. We will see you then. Until then, if you want to hang out with us and stay up to date with what's going on, give us a follow on Instagram at Reactivity TV. You can also follow me at Amy Albero, LCSW. We're doing lots of polls. We're wanting lots of your takes on our takes over on our Instagram. So definitely get involved over there. We will see you next week with more. Take care. Happy Halloween. See you soon.
See ya.